Are you gonna psychoanalyze me? No, we are not going to psychoanalyze you. Maybe 200 years ago, that was what therapists did, but no longer. I can assure you, most therapists, we go about things a much different way. People think of Freud as the founder of psychology, and yes, he used psychoanalysis. Back then, he would have you lie back in a chair and he would just listen to you for hours. Therapists now, we're trained to have a non-judgmental attitude. We're going to be listening with compassion, and regardless of what you tell us, we're going to accept things for the way they are. We're not going to blame you and make you feel like you regret ever coming in. In the 21st century, when you go in to see a therapist now, you're going to be seeing a therapist who's going to use something with you called CBT, which stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. And really, that is the most common form of therapy that we use now because it's evidence-based. So CBT is going to be more short term. It could be about 8 to 12 sessions. And in those 8 to 12 sessions, I just want you to think of your therapist as a coach. They're going to be that person to help coach you through your life struggles, whatever's bothering you at the moment. But the difference is that this coach has gone through formal training, years of education, studying research. They've done training in internship settings. They've been supervised. And like I said, they're going to talk to you in ways that are proven through evidence to actually initiate change and make you feel better. Now, oftentimes, all that you want in therapy is just to feel listened to and have someone to talk to. So that can be what therapy is. It can just be a therapist who's showing you empathy, another person that's listening to your struggles and making you feel understood. Second thing that the counselor is going to do is they're going to use confidentiality, which means they're not going to share anything you tell them with anybody else. And this is different from talking to your friends or family, because there may be things that are so private to you don't want to share with friends or family. But in therapy, you can tell the therapist anything and they're not going to blame you or get mad at you for what you're telling them. Once the therapist has established a good relationship with you and hopefully you're feeling comfortable talking with them, the main thing they're going to try to identify with you is how your thoughts are influencing your feelings and how your feelings are influencing your actions. And this is actually a whole little loop that I could draw out for you, but you'll start to see how these things are interconnected. In the first session, the therapist is going to do what's formally called an intake interview. But basically, it's just them getting to know you. They're going to ask some questions so they have a better idea of how they can help you. And I know it could be a little nerve-wracking to open up to basically a complete stranger, but they do this all the time. And the more that you are able to share with them, the more helpful they can be. You could, for example, just tell them, I've just been feeling a little down and depressed the past couple months. I'm just not really feeling myself. I'm not really enjoying the activities that I used to do, or I'm not really feeling like getting together with friends. And it just got to the point where I thought I would come in and see if someone could help me. In the second session, you and the therapist might talk about what goals you'd like to have for the next 8 to 12 weeks. And don't worry, the therapist isn't going to pressure you that you have to come up with these goals and you have to complete them in the short term. These goals are going to be thought up by you, and you're going to have some ownership over them, and the goals are going to be able to work at your own pace. Now, a big part of therapy is what's called homework assignments. And don't worry, these aren't big, daunting assignments that you have to spend a ton of time on, but they're things that you can work on at home, And then when you come in the next week, you can update the therapist on how things went, because therapy is only that 50-minute session. So there's only so much you and the therapist can work on together. But if they give you a homework assignment, you can work on things at home also. The most common homework assignment is if the therapist asks you to keep a journal. The journal could be in general, or it could be specific and detailed. The more specific and detailed the journal is, the more information it gives the therapist and you to talk about and work on. A therapist may give you a chart that could be your journal, where the first column is you're going to write about the situation that week that made you stressed, depressed, anxious. Then the next column of the journal is going to ask your emotions that you were feeling. You could rate them on a scale of 1 to 10. Next column of the journal is going to ask, what were the automatic thoughts that popped in your head? Then you could come up with alternative thoughts. What's something I could have thought instead? And what was the outcome after I thought differently about that situation? And then you could rate if your emotions went up or down. The point of the chart in the journal is to try to identify your triggers. So what's happening directly before you're feeling depressed or upset, and what can we do to avoid that situation from happening in the future? For the third session, and kind of how sessions will move on from here, is you're going to come in, the therapist will ask you, how was your week? How are you feeling? Are there any sticking points? And then you could tell them about things that went well or things that went bad throughout the week. And they're going to try to help you narrow in on what are some of the unhelpful thinking patterns that are leading you to feel a certain way. Because we all do this, and we all have bad habits, ways of thinking. Often we talk to ourselves in unhelpful ways. For example, you're always telling yourself that you're stupid, or you mess things up and you never do things right. Let's say that you failed a test that week, or you failed on a big project at work, and you're telling yourself over and over again, I always mess this up. Well, you and the therapist might brainstorm, is this belief you're telling yourself really true? Is it really helpful? Or is there something different we could tell yourself? For example, hey, I messed this up this one time, but usually I'm actually really good at this, and I'm going to learn from this and do better in the future. And I've succeeded on this many times before. I know this might sound cheesy or just like positive psychology, but believe me, it will work if you work with a therapist and they guide you through these ways of thinking and helping adapt your habits that you've been doing for so long. You might not feel better immediately, and maybe that's what's been happening in the past. If you've just been giving up too easily and dismissing this stuff as not working. But over the long term, let's say 3 months, you're gonna start to feel better. So give it a try and see how it works. The point is that you're gonna learn these skills with your therapist, and then in the long term, when you're done with therapy, you can take these skills of emotional regulation and mindfulness into your life at home, and you can practice without the help of a therapist. But whenever you might need therapy again, say a year, 5 years later, you could go back to the same therapist or seek out someone different. And that's it in a nutshell, guys. I know this is a huge oversimplification of the therapy process. There's tons of different styles of therapy. There's tons of different tools and techniques and exercises that you might work with a therapist, but I just wanted to condense this into basically a 10-minute video of what to expect. And like I said, most therapists do use a CBT model, so this is likely how things may go. I hope that was helpful, and if you have any comments or questions, just leave them below and I'll get back to you guys.